Happy Halloween, everybody, and welcome to Respect Our Authority, Wisecrack South Park podcast.
Respect my authority!
My name is Jared, and I'm joined here by the rest of the authoritarians. We got Amanda.
Hey.
And Ryan.
Howdy ho and happy Halloween.
And Lux.
Spooky hello.
So today we're talking about South Park Season 23, Episode 5, Tegrity Farms Halloween Special. So I'm going to go around and do the old guess-a-roo. I am going to guess that Ryan is going to give this a D. I'm going to guess... that makes me think that I'm wrong, but I think Lux is going to give it a C, and I think Amanda's going to give it a B. How did I do? Let's start in the order I did it. Ryan, how wrong was I?
You know, you were remarkably right, actually.
Okay.
I give it a D, but with a big asterisk, because this is one of the few episodes of South Park where I kind of felt stupid watching it, because I'm like, I watched it and I'm like, was I just tired when I watched that? Because I really don't get this episode. I don't know what the mummy is. if someone can enlighten me what the mummy's all about, that'd be great.
Dude, I think it's just a mummy, as far as I can tell.
What?
Okay, Amanda might have something else. I've seen it.
There's some more conceptual juice to that mummy.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
I know that it was one of those things where I kept like trying to parse together what they were trying to tell me with the mummy. But anyway, I just didn't like the episode. It didn't really have that many good laughs. There was a bunch of callbacks to the other ones. Like, this is where kind of like the soft serialization stuff kind of gets to me, where it's like, if you're just watching that episode without having seen anything, then you are pretty lost when a lot of things come back up, which I guess that's serialization for you. But I don't know. I feel like they did it better in other weeks or in other seasons. I don't know. I just didn't really laugh this episode. That's kind of the core of the issue. D, exactly right what Jared said.
All right, 1 for 1. How did I do, Amanda?
Way too optimistic. I'd go more like C-.
Oh, see, I feel like you were giggling when you were rewatching the episode right before the podcast, so I was thinking, oh, she's like, enjoying it.
It was funnier with subtitles on, maybe, but yeah, no, I felt like just organization. Like, the thing is, and it's unfair, I kept comparing it to Jack and Crack because that was the best Halloween special ever.
Yeah.
And especially I feel like they begged that comparison when they brought up Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
And it almost felt like insult to injury, like you made a worse episode and you reminded me of how great that other episode was. I do feel like there was something interesting going on with the mummy in terms of like gaslighting and like semi-abusive relationships, and the way like we blame like the person who quote unquote enabled the abuser. But I feel like it would have landed better if it had been with like a girl, if it had been with one of the girl characters, because that's kind of, I feel like, how it classically manifests. Although according to one Reddit person, it might have just been a reenactment of Trey Parker's recent divorce, which I know literally nothing about. So I'm just I'm literally just giving voice to one Reddit person. But yeah, I feel like also like I feel completely over Tegrity Farms. Like I didn't think I would say that. I think last week Lux said that the least interesting thing about Tegrity Farms was that they sell pot. And I feel like this episode, it was like all about the pot and not about the mechanics behind it. And it just wasn't as interesting to me.
I agree with that.
Lux, what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, you basically nailed it. C-. I'm pretty much with Amanda. My thing is like, it was not a super well structured episode. And then also on top of that, it was like both plots, I think, actually had some cool juice to them, but they both needed more time than they got. So they both came out like way undercooked. Like the mummy could have been a whole episode. The Halloween special thing could have been a whole episode. Neither of them really play as half an episode.
Yeah.
And so it just was like, they both just fell really flat for me, because it was just sort of like, I can see where these are both going and why they could be fun, but they didn't it didn't give them nearly enough time to like get good.
Yeah, I did not. This is my least favorite episode of the season thus far.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The only time I laughed was when Randy said to Shelly, "Did you know that Snoop Dogg smokes weed?" That was funny. That was a belly laugh for me, but that was pretty much it. And there are a couple of reasons. I think the mummy thing does seem like a really odd joke to double down on for so much. Even I mean, I came away with it thinking it as just general passive aggressive relationships or equating relationships with curses, and I'm like, okay, that's funny, but I didn't really think it justified an entire episode. And the other thing,
Well,
the other thing I
was
want,
right that it is like an abuse gaslighting like story, but it's just like it's so rushed in that way. You don't really get into the nuance of it or anything like specific, so it just sort of sucks.
yeah, that's all just in dialogue though. It's all just in things that he is. I mean, other than the fact that he gives Butters a gift, and he, I think, rather graciously informs him that he already has another one. Everything else is just that they're just throwing these, they're just accusing Butters of these things that we don't really see him doing in any action. So it really does. I mean, I don't know if this Redditor is right about the Trey Parker divorce thing, but I mean, I actually think that, I don't know if the Reddit article brings this up, but I think there might be some juice to that, simply because one of the last things that Randy says at the end of the episode, he's like,
We did it just for us.
or yeah,
I'm the target audience.
I'm the target audience for
Mhm.
that. So it seemed like it was Trey saying that, yeah, this Halloween special sucks, but it was for me.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is what it kind of felt like at the end.
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But another thing is that it made me realize, like, wow, does every South Park episode suck that doesn't have Cartman in it? Because
Mm,
I missed him so much.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this didn't have any of the boys in it,
Except Butters.
except Butters, who's not one of the
Yeah,
original
the key
core
boys.
four.
Yeah.
Even as much as I love Butters.
Yeah. So this one's a bit of a bummer, but let's go into a recap. It's been 2 days since Shelly left her room because she's so sick of marijuana making people dumber, and she wishes it was illegal again. Randy looks to solve her marijuana problem before she spoils his plan to release a Halloween special strain of Tegrity weed. Meanwhile, at the Science Museum, archaeologist Butters approaches the mummy of Tuktan Ra to accumulate the last stamp in his artifact book against the advice of an ominous figure warning him of a curse. That night, the mummy bursts into Butters' room and gives him a Fitbit, but when Butters says he already has one, the mummy throws a hissy fit and kills 5 people. Frustrated with Randy's attempt to convince her to like weed, Shelly cooks up a concoction of deadly chemicals and pours it over the Halloween special weed. Initially thinking it's ruined, Randy and Towley are surprised to see the potion has made the weed bigger and danker than ever. The mummy terrorizes the school, and Butters is blamed for motivating its anger by being narcissistic. When Shelly vandalizes Randy's efforts again, he decides to throw her in jail with Butters. When the Halloween party starts and people start smoking the Halloween special, people turn into plant monsters, and Winnie the Pooh, Harvey Weinstein, and the dead cows from the previous episode come back to haunt them. Turns out the weed is just too dank and they're so high that they're hallucinating, so Shelly throws a cauldron full of coffee, Sprite, and Alka-Seltzer on them to snap them out of it. Butters apologizes to the mummy, and the mummy gets in a car and leaves, giving Butters a note saying he hopes he successfully works on himself. End of episode. Okay, so let's just start talking about the meta thing. Obviously in the episode, Randy kind of goes back and forth between referring to the Halloween special as the weed and referring to the Halloween special as the episode that we're watching. Do you guys think that there is this, especially with that thing at the end I previously mentioned, there's an overt realization or recognition that this episode is not good, or is that just my bias?
I mean, it does kind of feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well,
it just, I mean, I don't have much like deep to say about that. It just kind of feels that way in the sense that like they are constantly talking about how like this Halloween special is going all pear-shaped, like things are going wrong. It's like whatever. And so it does kind of feel like they're just sort of being like, here's our dumb Halloween special. Like you expect a Halloween special. Here it is. We didn't have anything to say this year.
right, yeah. It seems less that it's like, oh, this episode sucks, but we're just making it anyway. It's more like they're making a one-off Halloween episode a la, Treehouse of Horrors or something. So they're just constantly referring to it as this, oh, this is the special, isn't it special? And then it just all this stuff goes off the rails, and then they're just constantly self-referring to it. But I don't think that it's necessarily like this sucks. It's more like Lux just said, this is your average Halloween special. Spooky stuff's going on. Take it or leave it. We like it. Whatever. Fuck you.
I feel like it's also consistent in terms of Randy becoming the voice of the show at certain points, the way Kyle used to be.
Mm.
right? Like I feel like they've graduated from Kyle being like the super voice of the show to being Randy when he's not being like crazy and making deals with China.
Yeah, but for example, when Shelly pours the potion over the weed and says, "That's what I think about your special," are we supposed to believe that there's some sort of ruining of the episode itself? Like something is happening to the episode that is, or the episode itself is also being tarnished, or
Well,
not really?
One thing that just made me think of, that just popped in my head right now, is like there has been a certain degree of sort of like fans. I mean, I do our mailbag, so I have some insight into that, and like just like on the internet, people being like, "I'm sick of all this Tegrity weed. I want South Park back. What I want is South Park the way South Park used to be. Blah blah blah, whatever." And so I think there's maybe some juice to like that's what Shelly is, right? She's like the people who hate Tegrity weed, and she's ruining the thing. And then the weed's the stand for the show again. And then she's just like destroying it because she doesn't like, you know, this new direction, and all we ever talk about is weed now. I mean, we've had emails about like from people emailing to the show where they're like, "I'm bored of how the show just talks about weed all the time."
Totally.
So maybe if we're talking meta stuff, there's sort of a correlate there.
Yeah, and I also think that Shelly's quote unquote weed problem is they've made passing jokes about it a couple other times, and that was good. I didn't really think that this new or like extending it really added much.
No.
Again, this is why I feel like it needed a whole episode, because they never really established like stakes for it. Do you know what I mean? Like they never established like why we give a shit about her weed problem, how it affects other people except for Randy, like how Randy feels about it outside of he likes to have his weed. Like all that shit just never really gets any juice. And so like because there's no real energy there, it just falls super flat for me. Like I think it's a funny idea for a bit. I think it's a funny idea for a premise, but like it doesn't go anywhere.
Julie, did you drink a lot of juice this morning, Lex?
No, I
kidding.
I was up late watching the Nationals win the World Series and then
juice with
subsequently
Tupac.
celebrating.
Gotcha.
And so I'm just like my vocab is limited.
I'm just joking.
Did you guys know that Shelly was into books?
Was
No,
what?
I think that's news.
Yeah, that's a new thing. That's the one thing I did appreciate about this episode, is that Shelly is one of the characters that is not very fleshed out in previous episodes. And we get an idea earlier in the season that she doesn't like weed, but in this episode she says that all I care about is books. And then on Halloween night she asks her dad to take her to the book fair. And that's a whole new kind of side of Shelly. I didn't know she was a bookworm. The
Yeah.
only thing that I really remember her saying is, "I'm going to go listen to my Britney Spears records."
Yeah, I feel like that's consistent with them like also fleshing out Mrs. Cartman and
Yeah, I wish they went further with it though.
yeah. One thing I feel like this episode and maybe the Tegrity Farms plotline is missing is like what South Park does best is escalation, and often like really rapid escalation. Especially with Cartman, where it'll start small and then suddenly he's like running the world.
Yeah.
And with Tegrity, like they made the stakes really high with the whole China thing, and then they just kind of cut it off, and now they're back to him just doing like random promotional stuff, and it just feels really small.
It does seem like they
Agreed.
keep on reliving the glory of Banned in China being
Yeah.
their most talked about episode in probably years.
Yeah.
But
Also, it's like there's a weird thing where like the vaccine episode kind of pivoted the emotional stakes to this like family question, right, during the scene with Cartman's mom.
Hmm.
And I thought it was really effective. And then they just like haven't really done anything to build off of that. Like you said, it feels small, but I think it could have felt really emotionally important or whatever by like digging deeper into like how Randy's fucking up his whole family, making everyone upset. But they don't really get super into that in like a meaningful way, just in a way that like leads to Shelly throwing bleach on some weed, you know?
yeah. But about the China thing, like obviously Winnie the Pooh coming back, the whole President Xi mask in the opener, which is also probably one of the best parts of the whole episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the better jokes.
And they have a new intro for the Halloween special, and it definitely feels more sitcom-y than even it previously was. You know, the Tegrity Farms Halloween special. And then they have those. Did they have in the previous episodes that kind of jazzy opener whenever they come back from commercial?
I feel like I've seen it before.
Yeah.
I think they've used
yeah.
that this season.
Okay. You know, it's weird because on the sling that I'm watching this thing on, it usually cuts the episode off like 2 seconds before it starts and 2 seconds before it cuts to commercial.
Mhm.
So, but this time it didn't do that. So I feel like I actually got to watch the whole episode this time. So maybe that's why I'm behind on this stuff. All right. Any other insights on the meta before we move on to the Mummy? No.
Tell me about that mummy.
Yeah, please, guys. Who's got insights on the Mummy?
Amanda,
Unless-
you want to go? You seems like you have a little more coherent version of explaining this than I do.
I mean, it felt pretty clearly like the Mummy was a representation of a gaslighting-filled relationship where,
Okay,
like,
can you define that for me? Sorry. Like gaslighting is convincing somebody else that their subjectivity is flawed or something?
yeah, like at one point, Butters is like, I feel like I'm crazy. And it, like, well, the term gaslight comes from like a 1930s-ish movie where, like, the husband is doing everything to convince the wife that she's crazy. And so he, like, turns the gaslight on or off or something. And she's like,
Oh.
why is the gaslight off? And he's like, it's always been off.
Is it diabolique?
No, it's
Okay.
literally called gaslight.
Oh, okay.
And so the term just means, like, and I probably butchered the plot of the movie, so I apologize, but the term just means convincing somebody that all the problems that you're causing in the relationship are their fault and their, like you said, their subjectivity is just wrong.
hmm
And that's kind of what the Mummy's doing from the beginning. And it was funny because the janitor, the museum worker said, like, this is an ancient love curse. So it's definitely like setting it up as a romantic relationship, which makes me definitely think it's supposed to be a gaslighting thing. And just from the beginning, like the whole point of gaslighting, especially when it comes from like a broader group of people, is that you're being blamed for like shit that your partner did. So when Butters, doesn't reject the gift, he just doesn't need it. And then the Mummy kills a bunch of people. They're like, don't you think that was really rude of you? And it also really reminded me of the way when like somebody commits like a heinous serial killing act, we often talk about the way his girlfriend rejected him. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh.
we will be like, oh, well, his girlfriend made out with another guy, so it makes sense. And it's really, I feel like in that way it was pretty on point, but it was weird to me that they didn't do it with a girl character.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could have been strong with the lady character. I think it works with Butters. I just felt like it's so undercooked because a lot of what you're saying makes sense and is true, but it also is like very, because I basically agree with that read. It's just like very barely in the episode. You know what I mean? Like the text doesn't really go deep on any of the complications there or any of that stuff. It's just sort of the same bit over and over again.
Totally. Like they had one
Um,
funny joke, like a gaslighting mummy, and then they just kept kind of hitting it.
And they're
We
like,
don't,
the
know if
mummy
that,
continues.
we don't know if that mummy's a girl or a male, right?
Well, it's
If it's a pharaoh, it's
Tukt-
probably
yeah,
a
Mummy of
dude.
Tuktan Ra.
Okay, all right.
Pretty
I'm
sure
wrong.
Tuktan Ra is a man.
Continue.
Ra is
I
king, right?
I guess there
Yeah.
were female rulers in Egypt, but not many of
That
them.
could have been Cleopatra.
Not that it
Yeah.
matters. I mean, it could be a gay relationship, but it was just, it
Yeah.
was more that tends to be like a gendered conflict, I think. I don't know if I'm being too
Yeah.
basic.
I
No, I
know.
think that's fair. I just think that and I think that's probably one of the reasons that it doesn't instantly read the way that they want it to. I think that Butters also is like a more manipulable character, which makes it easier to put Butters as that character.
For sure.
that makes sense.
But it doesn't make it as like, it doesn't have like the same kind of visual pop of like immediate recognition that I think they might have wanted.
Yeah.
The whole Trey Parker divorce thing, did that happen recently? Like,
I know.
no, you don't know.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I mean, like,
Because why else would they have pulled it? I mean, even if you were to say that they're gonna, why pair Halloween with gaslighting? It's not like gaslighting is really something that's
I just
super
don't see Trey
contemporary.
Parker being the guy that's going to air his own personal dirty laundry in a fucking South Park episode, and humiliate his ex-wife.
I don't know. You got
Do you
six.
see that?
Well, if you got 6 days to make an episode and your life is defined by one horrible event that is completely dominating your psyche, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe, but I don't see him being that kind of a person. I don't know.
Not to like be inflammatory, but he did file for divorce in June and vacation with his estranged wife in August. So it does seem like,
It's relatively recent.
yeah. But I think, I think like regardless, what I liked about the point, and I think if like Lux said they had fleshed it out more, it could have been saying that what's scariest isn't like monsters and demons. It's the way we hurt each other and the way we like emotionally abuse each other when in our closest relationships.
Hmm.
Right. Like the problem, well, what's frustrating is that the problem of like this mummy is breaking stuff is very like whatever. You didn't see it, but I did like a jack off hand.
Okay.
But I realized that was like an important punctuation that no one can see. But the thing is that what's actually interesting, like kind of what is getting at, is like the effect of like how we like blame victims and bullshit people and sort of allow these cycles to continue by being shitty about them is a much more interesting monster than just like angry mummy. And I think that could have been a whole fucking episode, because that's the kind of thing you could apply in a lot of different ways across an episode with like subplots or whatever. But they just like don't. So instead of having this cool sort of examination of like this dumb, shitty social complex where like we blame victims and make up reasons not to care about things and allow like shitty cycles of abuse to continue, it's just like there's an angry mommy, which is like infinitely less interesting.
Angry gaslighting mummy.
Yeah.
So when the mummy drives off in the red car at the end, I know that's a reference to something, but I don't know what it is. Did anyone else catch it?
It felt very referential, and I couldn't tell what they were referring to.
I was like Ferris Bueller red car, Vacation red car. I'm trying to think of any other red car convertibles. I don't know.
Especially with the sunglasses that the mummy puts on as she looks in the rearview mirror and drives away.
It's not like 5 Easy Pieces, is it? Does he have a red car?
I haven't seen that in a long time.
Well, the 5 Easy Pieces is a total gaslighting relationship movie, so that could totally be it.
Interesting.
It really depends on the color of his car.
Yeah.
That actually, that's crazy. Did that just pop in your head right now?
Yeah.
That might be it. Yeah, because she does at the end of that movie leave him like a, but she's the good person. She's the one being gaslighted. It feels like it should be Butters.
Doesn't he abandon her at the gas station?
I remember it's
been a while, but
oh god damn it. Okay.
But yeah, that is actually one of my problems with the ending of that story is that like in the end the mummy just like leaves Butters and is like, I hope you can work on yourself. I can't fix you. And it just like feels like we never really get Butters any kind of energy of like taking charge of the situation or like overcoming anything. It's just like Butters gets gaslit by a mummy for a while, then the mummy goes home.
I kind of feel like that was the point, is that when you're gaslit enough, you do start to think that you are the problem.
Oh, I think so. I just think that
it's
again,
not
enough
interesting
time
arc.
And like not enough stuff there
for sure
to make that work for me. And so in the end, it just felt sort of like super flat.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a story.
All right. Well,
this episode sucked.
This episode sucked. I was not a very big fan of it. The only other thing I have here is talk about PC Principles saying, I don't want to see any fucking sombreros or anyone dressed like a Native American. I'm going to lose my fucking shit.
That was the best part of the episode, dude, was PC Principles' speech. I forgot about that.
That's my second.
I also did love Butters in the museum.
Yeah.
It was pretty cute.
If I see a fucking Moana costume, I'm going to fucking freak.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
But let's cut this one short since we obviously don't have much to say. So let's go straight into the mailbag. Before you go into the emails, Lex, we got a fair amount of voicemails. Let's start with this one from Dan about the Goo Man.
What's up, Goo Men and Goo Women? Dan here calling from Austin, Texas. Love everything Wisecrack. Got turned on during your Rick and Morty breakdowns a few years ago, and I just can't get enough. I'm calling in about your Let Them Eat Goo episode and wanted to touch on the cow murder scene. Other than it just being absurdly hilarious, it made me think of the unintended consequences of veganism. I'm from Wyoming, and I now currently live in Austin, Texas, both big cattle industry areas. And if hypothetically the majority of people switched to a plant-based or plant-focused diet, a lot of poultry farms and cattle ranches would go out of business if they're unable to make the switch. Other than that sucking for the people who do that, all of the cattle, chickens, etc. will have to be euthanized. Humanely, of course. There's no way around it. This just seems like a bit of fallout no one seems to acknowledge when arguing for veganism from a moral, protect the animals perspective. Having said that, love everything you guys do. Keep doing God's work, and I hope to see Jared at the Austin Film Festival if I can convince any one of my friends to come. And screw you guys, I'm going home.
Oh, awesome. Well, I just got back from the festival. I don't believe I met Dan, but next time.
I'm here all the time.
Was he gaslighting us? Was he telling us that if we choose to do the right thing and become vegans, that actually that is causing us to be murderers by default?
I don't think that's gaslighting, but
I do think it's.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know.
I do think there's some there. You know, like it's not untrue that that's like a consequence. It's just like everything has a consequence.
Right. I didn't know that was a funny.
No, I've definitely never thought about that before.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. It's sort of almost an analogous argument to like people being like, if we switch to solar power, what's going to happen to the coal miners?
Right.
Only the answer to that question is like they work on solar farms, whereas as opposed to like they get killed.
Yeah, there aren't like a bunch of oil cows being killed.
We can't just let them free to roam the pastures and live in utopia forever.
What pastures?
Most farming cows are not prepared to just live in a pasture utopia forever.
What?
These are delicate babied cows.
Petting
All right,
zoos.
let's move on to Frank.
Booming petting
Hello, my
zoo
name is Frank
industry.
Jashek. I like to listen to your things. I was listening at work today, and I kept hearing you guys talk about how the season might have an overarching thread that kind of connects everything.
Oh, well, that went to
But
shit.
none of the endings seem to be overly fulfilling, and they just kind of like stop. I was thinking maybe that like maybe they were like correlating it with how all these mainstream news articles kind of come in with big waves, like the detention centers were a big thing, and then it just kind of faded away, and then nothing happened. And issues with China are going on now with Blizzard and other companies, and it's probably just going to fade away and turn to nothing. And the same thing with, what was it, like 2 seasons ago, last season, where they had the school shooters, and then nothing really happened. So just a thought from me. Love your shit. Love Funhouse. I believe it's Ryan is connected to that. I don't know. I'm at work. Bye.
Right on.
All right.
Yeah, he's basically just, you know, that's one of the best parts about South Park is really as a 1-to-1 for life. You know, because I also hate the fucking, it's one of the things that I hate about 2019 is just, we're so mad about something. And then it's like, wait a minute, remember that thing everyone was mad about? Oh yeah. No one's mad about it anymore. What the fuck were we doing 2 months ago? And that's the same with South Park. It's a
Cultural amnesia.
I feel like they could play
cultural amnesia.
They could play that up more. I think they did that a little bit with the school shooting. They really effectively showed the way we just kind of move on and forget it or don't deal with it. But I think they could reference more like the fact that they're just moving on from these issues. / they're really not anymore because they can't get over the China thing.
They can't get over the China thing. It's certainly not the weed thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that's kind of true about, I mean, it's just, this is all a product of like shitty businesses a la Tegrity Weed, like buying like actual journalistic enterprises and like running them like businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that they implicate like business practices generally is all pretty true of like the reason why we just forget about everything. And it sucks. I mean, that's not wrong. Right. Like,
so you think it's a media thing, not just a human nature thing?
Yeah. I mean, all the good investigative journalism sites have been bought by billionaires who don't like being investigated and have been turned into content farms for articles about dogs.
I like dogs.
There's still investigations going on. But I mean,
not the quantity wise. I mean, like Deadspin Gawker just died, right? Yesterday.
Yeah.
Sports Illustrated, which has a pretty good media journalism wing, got bought by Maven and got shut down. But
even those are
various Vice properties.
Those were disruptive to begin with, you know, to the whole media landscape. Like Gawker made its name on being like, oh, we're the new face of you know, journalism. We're these gumshoe reporters out there on the beat. And now look at them, you know, I feel like the model just isn't sustainable because of human nature, because we don't give a fuck.
And because of Facebook. You know? No, mainly because of Facebook, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Except that like Gawker was making money until Peter Thiel and Hulk Hogan murdered them, and like Deadspin
because they
money.
did fucked up shit. I mean,
well, we don't have to get into the ethics of Gawker. I think Gawker was a good website, and everyone should be sad that it's gone.
All right, moving on to Joe, who's got a voicemail about shots.
What's going on, Wisecrack? This is Joe from Canton, Ohio, and this is going out to Big Bad Dirt Hat. I just want to make this real quick. I sent tweets and written on the website, but I might as well leave a voicemail so it's official. For episode 3, there was a question as far as the scene from the house when half the town come in to vaccinate Cartman against his will without him even knowing. I believe you can draw that to a scene in Full Metal Jacket. I'll just leave it to the socks and the soap. When Private Pyle was bringing down the entire platoon, you had to kind of take him out and teach him a lesson or do what needed to be done. So that was the same thing that could be said for Cartman being the only kid in South Park who has not been vaccinated. So you just have to do what you have to do. And
I'm gonna cut him off there. Someone else mentioned this, and I believe there actually is a different South Park episode that makes that exact reference with the soap in the socks and all. So that's why I don't think that that's quite the one-to-one here, because they've already made that reference, and there are some differences. So in the scene in Full Metal Jacket, all of the other militia are in the same bunk room with Private Pyle. There's no somebody quietly letting them in as they quietly go up the door or up the stairs and into his room. So I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I mean, no one has really emailed us with a more precise answer to what that's referring to. So maybe
I think he's
just
right.
not an illusion.
I think that they did their second a parody of this episode or that scene, and because once I read that, I was like, oh, that's totally correct. Like, because the music, the whole tone of the scene is right. It's like they're sneaking up on a sleeping person and about to fuck him up. But then in this case, they just don't get to because he starts squealing like a pig. But I completely buy that reference and think that they're right.
Maybe it's just because the last time they did it, it was much more precise, is why I'm a little bit more hesitant to buy it. But I definitely see the similarities.
Yeah.
It's the music that really does it for me.
All right, we got one last one from Luis.
Hey guys, this is Luis from Florida. I was just watching the Goo Man episode of South Park, and I noticed in the back, in the last scene where Eric explains to everybody why he was wrong and why he should whatever. There was a poster of the shoot, I'm super stoned.
I fucking knew it.
Mintberry Crunch Kid, my bad. There was a poster in the background that said, "Have you seen me?" And it was a picture of the Mintberry Crunch Kid from the Coon and Friends episode. I just thought it was a cool little side thing. Anyway, let me know your thoughts about that.
Yes, best voicemail in a while.
So
yeah, that's really good.
So is it that
I saw this cool thing in the episode? It was in the back.
Is it that the Mintberry?
I got really high. I just wanted to tell you. Thank you very much for the voicemail.
Yes, thank you. That was Luis. Is it that the Mintberry Crunch Kid in that Coon and Friends episode? It's been a while since I've seen that one, but he like ascends basically and becomes this full-time superhero, and that's why he's like missing or something because he's not a regular kid anymore.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I think he handles the Cthulhu and like turns out he's from outer space or something. I forget. It's something like that.
And that's
I
Henrietta's.
have no memory of it, probably because I was stabbed.
Yeah.
That's Henrietta's brother, the goth girl.
Yeah.
Right. All right, cool. Let's go into... So, by the way, if you guys want to send us a voicemail, it's 213-534-8807. If there was something profound about this mummy... Or 21-ELFGUT07. If there was something profound about this mummy episode that we missed, let us know. And Lux, take it away with emails.
All right, we got a few. Starting with a long one from Nathan that I think is pretty interesting. Nathan says, "Hey guys, want to start by thanking you for an amazing podcast." Hey, you're welcome. It's always interesting to hear other people's insight, especially when they are more well-versed in movies than me, since I never seem to get the movie references on the show. My first point is that I personally found it funny PC Principal brought up not dressing up as bums/homeless people on Halloween. And only because no one does that, people do that. But because politically correct liberals don't usually care for those of lower income, hence why liberal cities love to parade around diversity, but will turn a blind eye to the homeless or in worst cases, kick them out. I don't know if it was intentionally or not, but I found it funny nevertheless. The second point has nothing to do with this season. Well, okay, so let's say one second. What do you think about the first thing about this low income homeless people costume stuff.
Well, no, when people do that, is it because they're lazy or they actually think it's funny? Because I obviously there have been people who's like, oh man, I don't want a costume. I'm just going to put on some shitty clothes and pretend to be homeless. Is it that, or is it, oh man, it would be so funny if I trivialized homelessness by looking like a bum?
I think it might be one of the same. Like, I think if you know, the way, I think.
Well,
I
the
think
second
both
one is definitely more cold-hearted to me.
for sure.
I mean, I've once in middle school just put on regular clothes and said, oh, my costume is a pedestrian. And I thought I was so clever. But obviously that's different than saying I'm
It's
homeless.
very different and more clever.
Yeah.
I was like when I was, I want to say 10 or something, I was like, I did this. I was like, I want to be like one of the train hobo people with the thing, or, you know, a knapsack, like in the cartoons, you know, like, and then later so I don't know. I feel like that there is something, I don't know. It's a pop culture thing, but at the same time, yeah, when you think about it, you're like, you shouldn't be, you know, trivializing this.
Yeah, but at the
pretty
same
fucked up
time, where
situation.
you grew up, Ryan, had you ever even seen a hobo? Because
No.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it was a character.
That's what I'm saying. It was probably something that you were imitating from the television.
Exactly.
Whereas
That's
here in
exactly
LA,
right, yeah.
whereas here in LA, unless you live in Brentwood, you're gonna run into some real homeless people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Although I do like the sort of point about the way cities parade around certain types of diversity, but not class stuff. And I do like PC Principal getting more class conscious, because, like, I don't know, that's a problem we deal with here in Austin a lot, is that people are very happy to talk about sort of top level diversity things while also passing laws that make it like okay to arrest homeless people
For sure.
for being homeless. In the so-called like liberal center of Texas or whatever. And so, like, I do think that it's an interesting thing and a cool thing for South Park to flag as like a intersectional concern for like PC people, because I do think a lot of PC people are like, don't be racist, don't be sexist, and stay away from homeless people. They're very dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like, that's fucked up, and you shouldn't be like that. You should be not racist, not sexist, not transphobic, and also class conscious.
Yeah. You know, I mostly agree with that sentiment. I will complicate it whenever with some anecdotes. Like, I have a rule to myself that if ever a homeless person approaches me and asks me for money or asks to talk to me, I want to treat them like a real human being and like actually converse with them like I would any other person. But that's bitten me in the ass before.
Yeah, same.
I've really regretted it, you know, when people like get in my face and threaten me with violence and stuff. In one situation, they once threw a Twinkie at my mom. So it's not, yeah, I know that's funny. But you know, it is complicated. I mean, it's trained me to de-incentivize myself to do that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I just think, like, institutionally speaking, you know, it's another oppressed population that sometimes gets like left out of the list of oppressed populations.
Definitely.
Which, you know, it would be cool if we didn't do that. On to Nathan's second point, which is a more wisecrack centric one. He says, the second point has nothing to do with this season, rather the last one. You guys had a theory that maybe the South Park duo knows about your podcast/videos on South Park, and I might have more proof pointing to that from the DVD commentary track.
Whoa.
At the very last minutes of their season 22 commentary for the last episodes, the Marxist ones, talk about how people bring up the Underpants Gnomes episode whenever discussing their views on capitalism and how silly it is. I don't know of any other place where this insight was made, but except for your videos on the Amazon episodes. Maybe this is definite proof Trey and Matt watch your videos. That would be sweet. Here's the transcript of the relevant bit, but you might find the commentary track somewhere else. And here's the transcript. Trey. And what was funny was the stories that came out going, wow, I guess Trey and Matt are anti-capitalist now, even though they've clearly changed their stance, because in their second season episode with Underpants Gnomes, blah, blah, blah. It's like, really? You're going to talk about Underpants Gnomes? Matt, yeah. And then Matt says,
Definitive
yeah.
proof, baby. That's it. We're in their minds. We're in the South Park zeitgeist. Yes. There you go.
Well, it goes on. Matt says, yeah. Trey then says, you're going to base our politics on Underpants Gnomes, but now, because of what we've said about fucking Integrity, Weed, and Gigantic, Matt says 300 episodes. Trey says, yeah. Matt says 300 episodes. You can do both. You can do both critiques of capitalism. It's fine.
Hell yeah. Great answer, Trey.
I would be surprised. First of all, I'd be surprised. I mean, maybe they've seen a video or two. I'd be surprised if they watch them religiously. I'd be surprised if they listen
I would
to this
not
podcast.
at all, dude. I mean, think about it. You're the South Park guys. You put all this work all week into one episode, and then you're like, all right, I know that there's these people that are going to make a video on every, analyzing every episode. It takes 5-10 minutes to watch. I would doubt that they watch them all.
I doubt it. I mean, there's Washington
no one else
Post
doing this. I mean, who else is
well, sometimes the
analyzing
Washington
South Park
Post
like
or
us?
there are other Forbes, Washington Post will often do articles about South Park, not on every episode, and we only
But
do it.
they're lame, and we're cool internet people.
I do feel like a lot of creators like
I mean, Ryan's right about
consciously avoid commentary
Yeah.
because it would fuck with your head.
Matter of fact, I was at the Austin Film Festival and I saw that now infamous panel with the 2 Game of Thrones dudes, and one of them said that, yeah, I swore off the internet in season 2 because I just realized it would start affecting me as a creative, and it wasn't only the negative stuff that was hurtful, but the positive stuff became hurtful too because you get addicted to it.
Mhm.
And
But these that's the one big difference. Like I can see that if like you're Game of Thrones guys and you just put out, got through your first big show. These Trey and Matt are for one, they're jaded, they're rock hard in their own ideologies, and then they've been around for 30 years or whatever. So
yeah,
it's
so
like
to me that
and-
says
and-
they just won't care. They're just like, who the fuck cares?
Exactly. They are like they probably are just reading it out of morbid curiosity because they want to see what other people's interpretation of their work is, but they know who they are and they're not going to change because they read a review.
See, I think this is just a difference between you and I, Ryan, because I think that if you had a show where hundreds of millions of people were watching and there were videos being made, you would watch it. I wouldn't.
Hell yeah. I'd read every comment, and then the ones I agreed with, I'd say, hell yeah, I agree with that. And the ones I didn't, I'd say, fuck you.
Yeah.
Not to their face, in my head.
Yeah, I would not. But
in my journal.
Anyway, Lux, what's the next one?
Next, we got JD, who says, "Hello, authoritarians. I love the content you've been creating. Please keep up the insightful commentary." Well, that's the plan.
We're trying.
I enjoyed a lot of aspects about Integrity Farm's Halloween special, especially the plotline surrounding Shelley's weed problem. As a substance-free college student, I found the joke that people who refrain from drug and alcohol use are the real danger to society nowadays to be a completely hilarious inversion. It's been especially relatable for me at every social gathering I've attended for years, and it felt nice that they decided to make lip pod jokes that even the annoyingly sober people could relate to. One aspect of the episode that I didn't entirely love was the meta commentary about Randy's and also Matt and Trey's Halloween special. Why make fun of yourself for making an unfunny and unsuccessful episode when the final product seemed to come out well enough? At least it did to me. Maybe I just need to sit on the idea a little more. Anyways, thanks for reading this message and happy Halloween. Respectfully, JD.
I hadn't really thought about the connection between the Shelley stuff and the Butter stuff, how they both are pretty much being gaslit. Like Randy is straight up gaslighting Shelley for not wanting to do drugs, basically.
That's a good point. He's making her think she's crazy for hating weed when she just loves it.
Which is interesting. And I actually, it's funny because I think that maybe they're touching on a generational thing where like younger people don't like to drink and party and smoke as much weed. I don't know if you've heard this, but there's kind of like a cultural backlash,
Mm-hmm.
Like
you mean younger people younger than us or our generation?
No, younger
than us, like high school, college age kids. There's kind of a whole movement of like, oh, I don't need that shit, which is cool, of course, but like but then when you're looked at as the weirdo for not wanting to get high or get drunk, then I think that's kind of the angle they're taking with Shelley, which is interesting and relatable.
When I tell people that I don't drink, I feel like I have to qualify that I didn't used to be an alcoholic, or I don't have some like sordid past that has caused me to do this, because most people hear that and they're like, what the fuck? Like, how is that even possible?
Like, what's wrong?
What's wrong?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he must have had a
What
dark
happened to
past if he's
Jared?
swearing off. Yeah.
I have a similar thing because I don't drink very much, and at parties people will be like, "You want to drink?" I'm like, "No," and they just like look at me like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, exactly.
I do think that like the joke that JD's getting at is a really funny idea for a joke. I just don't think the episode really does the joke. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think it really like gives stakes to her not liking weed, except for that Randy thinks it's lame.
Yeah, like he could have brought her to like a sober anonymous meeting or something.
Yeah, or maybe her sobriety causes a problem, or maybe it solves a problem. But I guess it solves a problem at the end, sort of.
I mean, she's not part of the family business,
Yeah, I just wish that mattered more to the show.
Yeah.
But I think that was a cool email. Also, like, we were talking about this earlier, but like, it is weird that they kind of like somewhat shit on the episode, or at least like kind of snarked about their own episode and then put it out anyways.
I think what that was that they literally got to the end of the work week and they were like, God, this episode kind of sucks. And then they were like, people are going to know that. Damn it, what do we do? And then they're like, let's just throw in a line at the end where Randy talks about it and we'll move on with our lives.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
It would be a lot worse to think that from the beginning, they're like, all right, we're going to make a shitty Halloween episode, and throughout, we're going to periodically put in dialogue that hints to the fact that this is shitty. Obviously, that would be
weird.
that would be real weird. I think we should probably cut it, unless, Ryan, you're the one who's got a piece.
Yeah, I kind of got to get out soon.
We're going to be back next week for episode 6. Hopefully it's better than this one. But until then, you can hit us up 213-534-8807 or southpark@wisecrack.co. Where can we find you guys on the internet? Ryan.
Ryan's Shorts on Facebook and YouTube. Ryan's Game Show, Facebook and YouTube. Funhouse on YouTube.
And Lux.
You can find me on Twitter at ML Surfboard. You can also listen to my other podcast, the Game Boys Podcast. You can find that at Game Boys Pod on Instagram, or just search Game Boys Podcast on iTunes. It's GAMEBOIZ podcast. And also the next Party World Wrestling show is going to start fundraising again soon. So I'll have a URL where you can go buy exclusive shirts and other merchandise that I'll share at the end of the next episode.
Nice.
Probably two episodes from now. I don't remember the dates.
I want to
soon. Do it. Go on the Indiegogo. We have the best merch in the business.
I know you do.
And Amanda.
All right.
Read our Medium, watch our YouTubes.
Cool. All right, we'll be back next week, guys. Until then, find it. There we go.
Screw you guys. I'm going home.
Peace.
Peace out.
Bye.
Spooky goodbye.